Today, we're going to analyze the biggest pot in American TV poker history. This hand was between Patrik Antonius and Eric Persson. A really fun hand, and I actually got the chance after recording this hand history breakdown to speak to Eric Persson about the hand. So I decided to re-record this intro, re-record the outro, talk to you a little bit about what Eric and I spoke about. Without further ado, let's get into the hand. So we start this hand with Eric Persson in a low jack, opening queen nine suited. He gets called by Rob Young on the button, and he gets 3-bet by Patrik Antonius with ace-king suited out of the small blind. So far, all standard. I might have raised a little bit bigger out of position with stacks this deep as Antonius, but not at all a big deal. This is totally reasonable 3-bet sizing. So queen nine suited here is pretty cuspy, but you really want suited hands. When you're $1 million deep in a game of this size, stacks are so deep that you can get away with continuing in position with a lot of suited hands, and I think this is a good call. Rob calls on the button with his suited ace deuce, which is standard.
I was going to 3-bet with my hand anyway, so it's cost me the same.
8-3-3 with 2 hearts. Flush draws for Antonius and Persson. Rob Young with the backdoor straight flush draw.
40.
140.
Antonius leads for 40K and Persson snap raises to 140,000.
We head to the flop of 8-3-3 with 2 hearts, 1 club. So Rob has the backdoor straight flush draw. Antonius bets 40K into 94K. Basically on paired boards, depending on how high the pair is, you have to be a little more careful with your bet sizing, but people are not calling 3-bets with a lot of 3s in their hand. Going with this kind of larger, close to half pot sizing makes a lot of sense to me. So just FYI, the reason that it matters how often they have trips, other than the obvious reasons, is that you want to think about what you want to do with your overpairs, which you have the big overpair advantage when you're the 3-better. So you have all the aces, all the kings, all the queens, all the jacks, and they've removed some of those because they would 4-bet with some of them. Plus your range is more concentrated. It's a smaller range around those hands. So you want to think about how big you can bet not only on this street, but on multiple streets with a hand like kings and still get value across 3 streets. Because if you start betting really big now on, let's say, an 8-8-10 flop, and then big on the turn and big on the river, by the time you get called, you're often beat. Persson has options. He could raise, he could call with his queen nine suited. I would tend to do a lot of calling here because there are not a lot of hands I would raise for value, especially when Antonius goes 40K instead of like 20K. I don't really feel like raising a lot of 10-10. The only hands I really want to raise are like trips, which is usually going to be ace-3 suited, which is going to be a massive hand, and then 8-8. And both of those, I think I kind of like calling a little bit better anyways. So I would tend to not have a raising range here. Persson opts to have a raising range here, and if you have a raising range, I think raising queen nine suited with the flush draw is totally reasonable and a good play.
I think Persson's serious. Just get it in. Whoa.
Antonius clicks it back.
Let's go.
Makes it 250,000. Persson calls.
So what I would normally say here is that Antonius has no decision. He just has a very easy call of this extra 100K. It's possible that Persson's raising a hand like 10s or 8X to see where he's at, kind of get some value and protection. But all in all, you kind of want to keep in bluffs because those bluffs are likely to continue on a heart. And you have ace high, you're beating the bluffs. So 3-betting here is only putting in money against stronger hands. You're rarely going to make those stronger hands fold. And if you can do that later potentially. Patrik does go ahead and raise here, and I think there are 2 reasons for that. Persson is the most aggressive player in the game, especially post-flop. I think Persson is probably the most likely to be raising a hand like 10s, to be raising a flush draw. Like I said, I don't even have a raising range. You can absolutely get away with one. And so because of that, I think Patrik puts him on a weaker range than he would put, let's say, Robel on if Robel raises flop. Second, though, and perhaps most importantly, this game has a very unique structure. At the end of 3 days, whoever wins the most money gets an additional 500K, which is, a lot of big blinds. And if you can get all in on a flip, which Patrik with ace-king suited potentially can against a hand like 10s, or, increase the pot size against a hand like the one Persson actually has, you increase your variance and you increase your ability to be chip leading and be likely to have one of the biggest stacks. So Persson facing 110K more has a very easy call. He could opt to just rip it in and see if he can make Patrik fold something. But for the most part, Persson's got a live flush draw. He's got tremendous pot odds and position. So just call and see the turn.
The turn is the ace of spades. That locks it up for Antonius. Almost 600K in the pot. He has about 700K behind.
5 seconds.
You don't want to do that.
150.
Antonius leads for 150K.
So the turn actually makes Patrick's decision less interesting. I was really curious to see what he was going to do on, let's say, an offsuit 10 turn. By 3-betting the flop, yes, he was accomplishing increasing the pot size, increasing the variance, giving himself an opportunity to be chip leader, but he's going to find himself in a weird spot on the turn where with the stack to pot ratio, basically 1, he's got like 1.2x pot. Is he going to just shove it all in with ace king and hope he folds out a hand like jacks and then hits if not? Or is he going to check thinking that he keeps in flush draws? Is he going to bet a smaller amount and call it off, smaller amount and fold? I don't know. But instead, he just turns the ace and actually turns Eric Persson dead, which is, it's hard to be dead in a spot like this, in a pot of this size, in a 300 big blind pot. But Persson ended up really unlucky to be up against the exact hand he was up against with Patrik 3-betting the flop, which I didn't expect him to do. So now Patrick's decision is pretty easy. I think you want to bet something not all in. You want to bet something that keeps in flush draws and gives Persson a chance to call with a hand like tens. Whereas if you just jam this in, he's going to have an easy fold with tens, move on to the next hand. You can't get more value. If you just go all in, he's going to have an easy fold with his hand, queen 9 suited, because he has queen high. And even though he has some equity, he doesn't have enough equity to call off, an over pot size bet. So Patrik has an easy decision. He bets 150K, which I think is perfect.
I'm all in.
Persson jams!
What do you have?
Persson goes ahead and quickly rips it all in. And this is a play that is obviously, it's the type of aggression I was talking about earlier. Maybe Patrik has a hand like kings. Maybe Patrik has some kind of bluff. Maybe he was bluffing the flop, but he turned an ace and he can make him fold an ace. Person's like, well, I can call 150 because I don't think he can fold a flush draw yet. So I can call the 150, or I could throw another 442K in and see if I can make this guy fold. And he goes with the latter. It's hard to fault him for it because, again, it's such a hard spot to analyze. And he's played with Patrik in these cash games much more than I have. Here's the thing about this hand is Patrick's line doesn't make a ton of sense to me, because when Persson raises a flop, he's kind of saying, I can beat aces. And now that range will include hands that beat aces like trips or 8-8. It will also include some semi-bluffs like he has, and it might also include some hands like jacks that are trying to get that protection and value. Even though you have those weaker portions of the range is built upon the hands that beat aces. And so Patrik, who's usually going to have at best aces, often going to have an overpair, often going to have some bluffs, doesn't really want to 3-bet aces because you're just folding out the bluffs and you're putting in more money against the hands that beat you. And yes, they're the fringe semi-bluffs and jacks, but even like the semi-bluffs, you don't love putting in another 110K on the flop against a flush draw. Like, you're not getting that much value. You might as well call and let him bluff it off. Action's back on Patrik, and I think if Patrik had a hand somehow like ace-queen offsuit, he would probably find a fold here. But with ace-king of hearts, it's a little bit too tough to find a fold. So Eric is kind of convincingly telling a story like, I've got a 3, so somehow I've got 3-4 suited, king 3 suited, ace 3 suited. Although keep in mind, Patrik has, well, the ace of hearts doesn't matter, but the ace of spades is out there, the 3 of hearts and the 3 of clubs are out there, so only ace 3 of diamonds could exist as far as ace 3 suited. But king 3 suited, 3-4 suited, 3-5 suited, who knows if he's got like deuce 3 suited or queen 3 suited in that range? Probably not, but possibly. So there are a lot of 3x, and of course 8-8s. Now against 8-8, Patrik is almost drawing dead. He's just got his aces as outs to make a bigger full house. But against the 3, he's got his 2 aces and he's got 9 flush cards. And that is pretty valuable because with 11 outs, he's got almost the 25% equity that he needs. He's got about the 25% equity he needs to make this call.
Cool.
Oh,
Antonius
Hard drop.
makes the call.
Ace king. 9 or queen. I have 9 queen.
He hit the ace.
Oh, yeah, I'm dead. Fuck. Nice hand, Pat.
Patrik Antonius wins a pot worth $1,978,000. That is the biggest pot in U.S. televised poker history.
6.
So Patrik does make the call and actually is very pleased to find out he has 100% equity, which is really rare in a spot like this. Again, really unlucky for Persson to run into this particular hand. So what can we learn from this hand that we can apply to our own game? First of all, think about kind of what you build your range around. So Eric Persson's raising range is built around trips or better because Patrik's repping an overpair with a range comprised of overpairs and unpaired hands, of course. In order to raise against that when overpairs are such a big portion of it and the pot's already so big, a big portion of your range is kind of built around the part that beats aces. Once you have that kind of core of your range, you stack onto it some semi-bluffs like Persson had. You stack onto it protection-y, value-y hands like jacks at a low frequency. Don't do it super often, or you're giving Patrik the opportunity to 3-bet bluff you and or put in a lot of money with aces. So when I spoke to Eric Persson about this hand, we spoke on the phone. I don't have any fun text to show you like I did in the Tom Dwan video. We were very confused by Patrik's flop 3-bet. Neither of us could put him on a hand. We both felt like he wouldn't do that with a lot of value. He wouldn't do it with a lot of bluffs. So what could he have? And in those scenarios, you know, when you're comparing two extremely unlikely outcomes, one of them has to be the case. It can get very hard to compare. Eric felt that unless Patrik had trips or better, which he felt was very unlikely, by the time the flop got 3-bet and Patrik put in that turn bet, Eric jamming there would take down the hand. He really felt like even if Patrik had ace-king offsuit, he wouldn't call all of that off with top pair, top kicker, 2-pair, top kicker. After talking to him a little bit, I like his play even more than I already did. I was okay with his play before, but after he talked me through his reasoning, I think I like it even more. And he got quite unlucky running into the hand that he did. And props to Patrik for playing it in a very confusing way. That put Eric and I in a very tough spot. So these hand history reviews, I actually resisted doing them for a while. A lot of people watch them for entertainment and a lot of others watch them for education. And frankly, I think when you're watching hand history reviews, you're often not actually getting educated. So it's been my goal as I've started to do some of these to try to make sure that you're learning something throughout the process, not just being entertained by a fun hand. I hope that I accomplished that today. And if I did, let me know. If I didn't, you can let me know that as well. And subscribe if you want to see more. Until next time, this is Phil Galfond. Take care and good luck.